Thank you for tuning in to Perk Up with the President. I have the distinct pleasure of being here with Professor Chuck Konkol. Professor Konkol has been a part of Rock Valley College for a while now, and he's one of those dynamic faculty members that I love to engage and pick his brain on how he likes to engage students. So I am going to ask Professor Konkol to just introduce himself in a little more detail and speak to us on what does PERC. And when we talk about PERC, it's persistence, enrollment, retention, and completion. So what does PERC mean to him? How you doing, Professor Konkol?
Doing great. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you for attending. I appreciate you being a part of this. So go ahead and introduce yourself and talk to us about what PERC means to you.
Sure. My name is Professor Chuck Konkol. I've been at Rock Valley for 20 years now. I teach in the computer science area and teach all the geeky courses. So programming, web development, mobile app development, and I love to get students hired, local companies, and so that's a little bit about me. As far as, hobbies, I don't know if we're going to do that or not.
Go for it.
Why not, right? I love playing guitar. I've got about 15 guitars. I like to play when I get a chance, and so I grew up in a musician's home, and so only reason I didn't choose musician lifestyle is because they travel so much, and I didn't like that. I didn't like to travel as much, so, but I still love to do that, love to walk, love my grandkids, and so as far as persistence goes with students, just keeping them engaged any way I can, trying to be creative. Like even with this semester with COVID, it was real challenging, but one of the things I did was a scavenger hunt where students came on campus and at different times of the day where they weren't around each other, and took a QR code of a picture on a building. I saw a little video of that history of that building, and then they had to figure out a question, a little quiz question about the video they just watched. And so we had about 15, 20 students do that in one of my classes, and so little things like that to help keep them involved, keep them connected. A lot of online office hours this semester, and so yeah, any way to keep students engaged. From a programming standpoint, one of the things I try to do with all my programming students is have them create a custom app that each one of them creates for the class. That way when they leave the class, it means something to them and it's something they could use after the class. Because for years I taught canned programming solutions, which it works, but as soon as the students leave the class, they care less about what they just created. And so that's a way to keep my programming students engaged, is they're creating an app that maybe a number of them have put on the app stores, on the Android store or the iOS store for Apple. And so, I've got two students now scattered all over the US. They're a team of 3 or 4 now, I guess, working on the same app they started in 2013 here on campus.
Really?
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
So anyway, that's a little bit about me.
So in layman terms, what's programming?
Programming basically is everywhere you go. From your car to your phone to the cameras being used to video this. There's embedded computers, chips, and computer programming involved. All of us now, we get in our cars, it knows where we're at, it knows how fast we're going. You can even remote cars now with Tesla and things of that nature. And so pretty much you can't go anywhere without computers or programming. And programming is basically the skill to program whatever to do a certain task. So it could be an ATM to program when people type the buttons in, how much money they get when they hit the withdrawal, to pushing the start button on a vehicle to start the engine, even pushing the gas pedal, because that's all electronic now and all computerized.
Or the coffee machine.
Or the coffee machine, exactly. And so it's just a series of tasks that is programmed to do A to Z. And I always tell people that think they might be interested in programming, if you like to solve puzzles, you like to figure stuff out, you like to have solutions. I'm a solutions person. I don't like to think about problems all the time. I like about solutions for problems. And if you're that type of person, you might want to be a programmer. And it's because we need more of them. We definitely need more of them. One just recently I heard of an app that a student created, not in Rock Valley, but here in the U.S. It was an app for his dad that drove a rig, a semi, and he wanted to be able to take this camera app and figure out how many pallets could fit in the back of a semi by just looking at it with a camera. And he was able to create an app to do that. Here at Rock Valley, I did have a student here recently that created a fishing app that gave all the different fishing areas. In fact, you might have heard of fly fishing before. It was a fly fishing app that could tell where to go fishing right now, what's the prime spots to go, water depth, temperature, all that good stuff. And so, apps solve problems that, from cancer research to just having fun, enjoying life, right? To listening to music. And so everything from serious stuff to fun stuff, programming is involved.
So then, you've been teaching for 20 years now.
Yes.
Has some type of app been around for 20 years?
Good question. Well, mobile app development has not been around that long, actually. In fact, apps in general, you're talking 20 plus years, 24, 25 years max. And so everybody's familiar with Microsoft, right?
Definitely.
Microsoft's familiar with that. I would say the longest running apps out there would be Microsoft, Apple, Hewlett-Packard, and even way before that, before Apple and Microsoft ever existed, Hewlett-Packard was the computer company. They had custom apps that they built, were built on cards, basically, that just looked like punch cards that you would punch in a time clock with. And that's what the app was created. In fact, a faculty member here on campus gave me a box of punch cards that we used here on campus back in the 70s that they used for student records and for grades and all that good stuff. And they're just cards basically that they use to submit grades, to submit student information on these little time card looking pieces of paper with little notches in it. And so, but yeah, there's been apps out since I started programming. To give a history, before I became a teacher, I was in ministry. I had all my students know this because I tell them all this. I'm a theological geek. I have a bachelor's in theology. Through that time frame, I was a pastor and youth pastor. And like every youth pastor, they're always fixing stuff for kids. And one of the things I like to do is play with computers. And so, long story short, I had a job as a graphic designer during that time while I was pastoring. Sent me to school to learn some Photoshop, I believe it was. And I took some programming courses while I was there. So I was always interested in it, but I never took any formal courses, right? Uh-huh. And, oh man, I remember one semester, my photography Photoshop student, Professor Dudley Moore is his name, he always worked on this fishing lure catalog through the entire semester. He sat in the back of the room. All he did, he was a great teacher, but he also worked on his fishing lure catalog throughout the entire semester. And at the end of the semester, he would travel and pick a student to, proctor the class, basically. Well, he asked me if I would do it. I was the only one with kids in the class. Everybody else was right out of high school. And he goes, well, maybe you can be responsible enough to do it. And so I did. And so I did a couple courses with his class and fell in love with teaching, had already started getting involved in programming. And that's where I switched my path, switched from the calling to ministry to teaching, basically, at that time. And this was back in the late 90s when that happened.
Well, thank you for sharing your story, because one thing is clear is that a teacher also identified you or engaged or connected with you in the classroom, gave you an opportunity to participate on a different level.
Yes.
And then you got hooked.
I got hooked. I had no plans whatsoever, zero. I was just going to be, I was a nice guy and just going to help him out. And I told him I came back, I still blame him for it. I'm still in communication with him. And he still, to this day, is teaching.
Really?
It's at Drury University. It used to be called Drury College in Springfield, Missouri. And he's still teaching there. I think he's near retirement. But yeah, I still blame him. He's to blame for it. But I'm thankful that he gave me that opportunity, because otherwise I wouldn't be a teacher today. And if you'd asked me when I was in high school, forget it. That was not one of my suggested paths in life. And so I think that's helped me though in my career as a professor is having really, and I know there's a lot of stories at Rock Valley of professors that had that same kind of background where they were in some job and they did something at one point, somebody gave them opportunity and they taught and they got the bug, and that's what happened to me. So
Absolutely. There's
yeah.
in my doctoral program, there one of my dissertation committee members would say, learn to trust the process. Learn to trust the process.
Yeah.
Well, when you're walking in the unknown, it seems like every future step, it's hard to trust the process.
Yes.
And so many of our community college students are first generation college students. And so they're stepping onto campus for the first time,
Yes.
but convincing them to trust the process
Right.
and start their education
Yes.
is a holistic process. It's a process that faculty members have to engage in, and it's a process that non-faculty have to engage in.
Right.
So what are some of the things you've done to, because I'm thinking about enrollment and prospective students and things of that nature. What are some of the things you've done to convince the students to trust the process and help them to just connect at Rock Valley College?
One of them is since 2015, I started Hour of Code here at Rock Valley College, and it's a monthly meeting for people to learn coding. It's open to the public. It's from fifth grade or five years old and up, so we have whole families come for years. And up to March of this year, we were meeting at Cherryville Mall. They offered us a spot there on the mall on the second level. They set up the chairs every month. It was the first Tuesday of every month. Gave it like Wi-Fi, everything. All I had to do is bring my iPads, and that was it. But we've been doing that since 2015, roughly 15 to 20 a month. And since I've been doing it since 2015, now I'm seeing students that were in high school level that started the Hour of Code, now taking our programming courses, taking our Cisco courses, taking our networking courses, all because they found out about computer science in general by taking, Hour of Code. And it's something fun they could do every month. And a lot of them, what was cool about it, they would, mom and dad would bring the whole family, all brothers and sisters, or grandma and grandpa would bring their grandson and granddaughter to these events. So that's one. Other is Learn Coding with Robots. We did that last year. We had a grant with the Northern Illinois Community Foundation for 600 Ozobots, these little one cubic size, roughly about an inch in diameter, robots, and teaching coding with that. That was exciting. I was able to teach local K through 12 teachers how to teach the course, but it was sponsored by Rock Valley College. We were able to do that and successfully, give a kid not only a robot that was fun to play with, but my objective was to teach them some coding aspects of it. Because what they did was they would take this robot, and if you've never seen one of these, it's pretty cool, but they coded it's called Blockly coding, where you just drag and drop coding, left, right, straight, things like that, right? Then they take the robot and put it on the monitor of the screen. The light nodes push to the robot, and those light nodes transfer the code. They put the robot on the table, and it moves in the sequence they just programmed. So if you can get anybody, especially in the programming side of things, that immediate gratification of coding something and then seeing it do something immediately, a lot of times turns the light on, that they can do this. Maybe before they didn't think they could do it. And so those types of encouragement prompts, I call them, in teaching, and helps the student to decide whether or not they want to go on and pursue computer science. Because I think the latest stat, 7 out of 10 high schools, K through 12 in general, do not offer computer science courses in the U.S. Now here locally, we're a little bit better than that, just because of the private schools we have here in Rockford region. And there's some public schools that are doing a good job as well. I would say here regionally, we're probably around every 6 out of 10 don't offer, and so a little bit better than national average. And so without things like the Hour of Code, learning coding with robots, also do the after school Girls Who Code weekly. We've had to do everything I just talked about remotely this whole semester using Zoom. And so those programs help expose students to computer science that maybe otherwise they wouldn't. And because until Dudley allowed me to teach his course for a couple times, I didn't know what teaching was like, all right? When students get a taste of programming and can actually complete a program in 50 minutes to an hour and see it from start to finish that they did this and completed it successfully, every month it builds confidence in them, like anything that we do in life, to maybe go back and keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And so now I'm not telling you that programming's easy, because it's not when you start learning it. But you know, nothing in life is easy that's worth doing, I believe. And so if they keep at it, keep working at it. I've many graduates of Rock Valley College are all over the U.S. today working, and they were trained here at the college from our professors, and like myself and Jim Conley and Eric Wolf, Chuck Nelson, who recently retired. Great programming teachers that will instill not only the passion to program, but just life skills and how to interview for a job. We cover that in our classes, how to conduct yourself in the workplace, all those things that are important to be successful.
So then, again, you're providing a holistic approach and not just simply teaching or delivering the curriculum,
Right.
but you're looking at work-life skills as well and how that's going to help them in the real world.
Exactly. Yeah, that's very important. It's vital, because it's kind of like teaching. I was a chef going through school. It's kind of like teaching a chef all the ingredients, but none of the utensils, like a pots and pans and how to cook them and everything. You can have all the ingredients, the meat, the potatoes, the vegetables, the spices, but until you get somebody to train you how to use the tools to put those ingredients together to make something that works and that tastes good that people like to eat, it's kind of worthless. And so it's the same for me. If I can teach them just programming only, that's a disservice, because if they don't know how to maybe conduct themselves by meeting deadlines and by having confidence to start projects on their own and have great ideas and be a critical thinker, they're not going to succeed in the workplace. It's not going to happen.
You know, you mentioned something about, which I did not know that about you, that you used to be a chef. You still
Yes.
have any skills, by the way?
Yeah, I still love to cook. Oh my gosh, I am, and as you can see, I take advantage of it. So anyway, I'm trying my best to eat better, but no, I've always loved cooking from a little kid. I think I told you earlier, I was from a musician's home, right? My mom ran a bar. My dad would be a musician, so they fit well together. But anyway, Mom at the age of 10 would call me from her work, and talk me through how to make a roast, I remember. And I remember this old blue roasting pan that we used to use all the time. And when she passed a few years back, I got it. I have that roasting pan, and I still cooked it to this day. So yeah, I was a Mexican chef. I also was a chef at Hemingway's at Bass Pro Shops in Springfield, Missouri. Had a great French chef there that taught me French cooking and French cuisine.
Really?
Now, I'm 6'4", and the ceilings in that kitchen were like 6 foot. So the only thing is I had to kind of hunch over the entire time, but I love that job. And then Raphael's was a restaurant in Joplin, Missouri, that Victor Pedroza was his name, that taught me true Mexican food cooking, from everything from the rice to the beans to the enchiladas. I can cook it all. I still remember it. I have a very good memory when it comes to music, numbers, and recipes. I can do it. I don't measure anything. And I blame that on Hemingway's. The French don't measure a lot. It's all by taste. And so, like, my daughter was asking me recently for some recipes, so I had to force myself to measure things to give her that, because she's like, I know you don't use measurements, but normal people do. So if you could maybe write it down. So that's one of the things I'm doing. So, yeah, I was a chef for a number of years and restaurant manager. When I first got married, before I became a chef, I was a manager of Pizza Huts in Southwest Missouri. And so when you're a pastor, small towns, you don't make enough money to live on usually.
So you do it all.
So you have to work something else. And so my something else is pizza. And it fit well because youth group and pizzas work well together.
Hand in hand.
It doesn't, you're never going to go wrong with that. And so that always was beneficial. I remember there's a lot of Friday, Saturday nights where I was short on help, and I would call up my youth group guys, and they'd come and help me out. A lot of them are from the football team, so right after the game, 30 football guys would come. I'd say, well, what are we going to get paid? I'll say, well, I'll feed you afterward. That's all right. Oh, yeah, that's great. And so they work like 4 or 5 hours, and I feed them pizza. Now, hopefully the labor laws won't be hearing this video because it's probably not a legitimate thing to do, I'm guessing. But anyway, I did it. So.
You remind me of some of my experiences. I remember being in college and I played football, and you couldn't just go home whenever you in the mood to eat
Sure.
mom's cooking.
Right.
So there were times where I would call home and have her walk me through how to make banana pudding. It's one of my favorite desserts.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
Mom, so how do you do it? Why mine's never turn out like yours? And sometimes she would try to give me her instructions,
Right.
but she would say, sometimes you just have to watch me. You have to watch me.
Right. Yeah.
Because those ingredients are the exact ingredients.
yeah.
It's just slightly a little different. Right?
Yeah, slightly. A lot of times it is. Yeah, you're right. It is. Yeah.
So you also mentioned, as a chef, you were talking about the tools and using the being trained on how to appropriately
Right.
use the tools.
Sure.
So, of course, we can never finish a conversation without talking about COVID-19.
Right. Right.
So here we are in COVID-19, and I acknowledge and I recognize that there are so many faculty members that have their own levels of anxiety because
Sure.
it's new, teaching this way, delivering courses this way.
Right.
So for you, how has COVID-19 impacted your ability to deliver coursework and engage students?
Well, before COVID hit, I was teaching at least 50% online. I have for a number of years. So it wasn't a big jump for me, but I know there's a number of faculty that's the very first time teaching online. And it is a learning curve. It's not, and it's harder. It is harder to teach online because to keep students engaged, you have to communicate more, you have to over-communicate. I don't think it's like high school. I taught high school for a number of years before I became a university or community college professor. It's not like high school, but it's somewhat where you're having to have more connection time with students than you might have in a face-to-face environment. Now, one of the disconnects I believe with faculty, it's just generational. A lot of students I know that are right out of high school that are doing online are doing perfectly fine. This is what they've done since they remember. They never didn't video or didn't chat or didn't communicate in the ways that we're having to do online now. They've always done that. What I mean, just generations. So my nieces, my nephews, my grandkids, even my kids that are 34, have no real, for the most part, there's exceptions to that rule, but this generation is well equipped, I believe, when it comes to online learning. One of the things a lot of students and even faculty have to change is just the scheduling. Scheduling is different. You got to be more disciplined on your scheduling of when you study because you're not going to school, you're not going to sit in a classroom, and so making sure that they have a time to do that, and both not from a student perspective, but even from a faculty perspective. And so, the challenges from teaching totally face-to-face to online would definitely be a challenge, I know. I think our faculty, for the most part, have done a very good job. Those who needed help reached out. I've had faculty reach out to me. Mickey also reached out to her. I mean, Eric Wolf did a great job on creating a whole bunch of videos to help faculty get online, and then in our division, Stephanie Washer, her specialty is online. One of her degrees is in online learning, and so she's really good at helping faculty, in the online environment. And so I think faculty that are struggling or have struggled have reached out and done, really good. I believe. I mean, I know there's been challenges for them, but one of the funny stories I heard, if you don't mind me sharing, is Beth Engel was teaching her first day in the fall, and it was a Zoom session, right? And so she posted on Facebook afterwards, and Beth won't mind me sharing this because she posted on the public Facebook. So anyway, she posted she got all dressed up and was excited about her first day with her students on Zoom. And she connected, I think, 20 or 30 minutes before the class started, and was talking to students like she would in the classroom, right? And then, now, granted, after the class was over, many students, left, but there were some that hung out for another 20, 30 minutes. And she had a great time. She just had an awesome time. And so, I think, and she's brand new to it, and that was kind of cool to see that she was so excited about it. And she was, concerned for sure, but she kept at it, working at it, and it was just so funny, to watch her excitement. It was encouraging too, I think, to for other faculty maybe that might have been concerned or been struggling to see her comments, because she was just beaming, just so with excitement. The students were talking to her on Zoom before class and after class, and so anyway, that was a kind of a cool story that I shared that jumped out to me this semester. It was a very positive story of faculty success, and but yeah, I know faculty that are brand new definitely struggled, even though we had a taste of it, everybody did in the spring, right? But still kind of new to some
Absolutely.
faculty. And so, but I think that's normal to be that way. And but we've got good resources here on campus now too, with our online learning area and online development sections here on campus to help. So I think we're well equipped to help those who need it. And so hopefully after COVID, and everybody's saying, after COVID, BC, AC, I guess, before COVID, after COVID. So AC, whenever that's going to be, they'll go back to their normal. But what I hope is that too, those who maybe the first time starting online might still teach a course or two, continue to teach a course or two in an online environment, because students want that, students desire that, and I believe that in every section on campus, regardless whether it be biology, whether it be sociology, psychology, they all want more online offerings. So I don't think that's going to change. I don't think.
I do appreciate, I do appreciate your reference to AC and BC.
I was thinking about the other day that.
And I agree that after COVID, right, is there really a thing called going back to the way it used to be, or the normal?
Right.
So many of us now, from students to faculty to staff to community, have learned, like you said with Beth Engel,
Right.
have learned that they can be successful virtually.
Right.
And
right.
so in your mind, are students looking for more, you said, virtual learning, or are we just simply talking about not necessarily online, but maybe a synchronous component or an asynchronous component? Like, you're not necessarily saying do all classes online. You're saying
just offer more.
Offer more
Right, offer
online
more
or virtual connection to the.
Correct. I don't think, like not just community colleges or universities, but businesses in general will never go back to the way it was, because we've learned how to do things differently. And some things are good. Some of the things are positive. Some of the technology, like Zoom, has changed the landscape of communication, and not only community college level, but business level, personal level. How many families are doing Christmas holidays over Zoom, and Thanksgiving holiday over Zoom, and Hanukkah over Zoom? Their church services over Zoom. I mean, it's everywhere, and I don't think that component's going to change. It might slow down after COVID is gone, but I think that's a positive thing that's going to help stimulate more online offerings, more hybrid type of courses possibly, because students, there are students that work full time like myself when I was going through school that would have benefited from more online offerings. Mine wasn't offered to my master's level. During my bachelor's, it didn't exist. Online didn't exist. Online offerings didn't. So having that option, not to say it's for every student, but having that option for students to where if they need it and for their schedule, to fit their schedule. Because me personally, since I've taught at Rock Valley 20 years now, I have always taught evening classes or online. I've never taught a day course here on campus.
Really?
I've always taught evening. I've always desired that. I always wanted it. And one of the reasons is a number of our students work full time during the day, and they want to take and need to take courses at night. And so before we even offered online courses here, I saw that need, and I wanted to, fill that need. There were faculty who wanted to teach day, and we had students that, like right out of high school, that didn't work. We still do. They could take day courses, but we had a number of our, non-traditional students that worked full time during the day that needed those evening hours. And so I think now with COVID, one of the things we're learning is, number one, hopefully some faculty have learned that they can teach online successfully. And some of them will decide they don't want to do it again, but then there might be some that decide, you know what, I want to continue to do this, maybe offer a section or two of my courses online because they've found the need for it and the niche for it. There are students, though, that will benefit when that time comes for that face-to-face asynchronous environment. But right now, I think we're trying to, still in the COVID season, even our online offerings, trying to offer some asynchronous components in all of our, a lot of our courses to give those students that are traditional students that are desiring more traditional interface, that component. And one of the things I do in my classes, Howard, is I'll take and I will have an asynchronous component, but students aren't required to attend those if they don't want to. Mm-hmm. They can, because I record those sessions. So students who don't need that or don't want that can then watch it post-session. Because there are, a segment of my students in my programming class. Most often, it's usually, in my experience, this last 2 semesters and even before, roughly about, if the class is of 20, 5 kids, 4 or 5 students will be those who want to have that asynchronous component. And I don't think that's not really changed since COVID, for me anyway. It's the same environment. And so I think what's new is for faculty that are used to asynchronous only in a synchronous environment, switching that's kind of different. That's
Definitely.
Definitely different. And so anyway, my school of thought has always been to offer weekly podcast of all my lessons that students can watch over and over again at midnight, 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. They're not tied down to watching it, especially if it's an online class, at a specific time. The only specifics I have for my students, for the majority, and I always have, is I do have specific online offerings for my office hours and for one-on-one time where they need help. They have to schedule that. And I have students that take me up on that and definitely need it and want it, and I enjoy doing that. An example is right now, being finals week, all my programming students have to complete a final app, and I always offer the last few weeks towards the end of the semester, I'm a resource for them basically. If they need help, they can now schedule a Zoom session, I can help them out. And there's been a handful of students that have done that and that needed that. The majority of the students, though, have the resources to watch a podcast over, do a prior lesson over again, and they don't need to. They don't need that, one-on-one time, that one-on-one session sometimes. Some do, majority in my programming classes that do not. And so, but I think every section on campus is going to be determined on, like math, and it's a good example. It's more, sometimes more, you need more of that synchronous component back and forth of that with those students. And so I think that's important to continue that in an online environment.
Thank you. Thank you today for sharing. I do appreciate it. And I want to also thank you for listening in on another episode of PERC Up with the President, where we talk about persistence, enrollment, retention, and completion. But we talk about it from the lens of a faculty member. And in this particular situation, Professor Konkol reminds us of the importance of having an innovative spirit, finding ways to mind the gap when students need that additional connection, They need a diversity of various ways to connect. He's finding various ways to not just connect with our adult students or the evening students, but you also heard him speaking about community and the girls in coding and hours of code and things of that nature, where he goes out in community and encourage others to engage and build up their awareness for coding, but it also builds up their awareness for Rock Valley College. And I appreciate that because we are our community's college. So thank you once again for listening in and enjoy the day.